You're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Taunya Lowe, a podcast of curated conversations with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development. Get ready for inspiring interviews, educational lessons, and thought-provoking discussions that will challenge you to execute something new and innovative that will drive results in your organization. And now, here's Dr. Taunya Lowe.
Hello, you're listening to the Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Taunya Lowe. This podcast is designed to expand the conversation with C-suite leaders and those who support organizational growth and development, and what it really takes to create, develop, and maintain results-driven and high-performing organizations. Our guest today is Pamela Perdue, the Chief Compliance Officer for Sezzle, a trailblazing company with a mission to financially empower the next generation. Pam brings with her a remarkable career spanning 2 decades as a compliance and regulatory executive, leaving an indelible mark on both regional and national organizations. Pause. Okay, here we go.
All right. Love the intro. Love your radio voice, Taunya.
And I was like, why can't I pull down her? Okay, I got it. Okay. Our guest today is Pamela Perdue, the Chief Compliance Officer for Sezzle, a trailblazing company with a mission to financially empower the next generation. Pam brings with her a remarkable career spanning 2 decades as a compliance and regulatory executive, leaving an indelible mark on both regional and national organizations. Her passion lies in the transformative power of turning compliance challenges into a competitive advantage, utilizing a modern mindset, innovative methods, and cutting-edge technologies. With a career enriched by a unique 360-degree perspective on business challenges within highly regulated environments, Pam's insights are invaluable. Her entrepreneurial spirit shines through her role as the founder and co-founder of 4 reg tech companies, a testament to her commitment to driving innovation and compliance. Beyond her corporate responsibilities, Pam is a dynamic force in the industry, known for her engaging presence as a speaker and educator. She frequently takes the stage at banking conferences, symposia, and compliance schools, sharing her wealth of knowledge and inspiring audiences with her forward-thinking approach. She is a graduate of The Ohio State University. Pam embodies a commitment to excellence and continuous learning. Her idea of fun involves the intricate art of building compliance management systems that not only reduce costs, but also elevate effectiveness to new heights. Pam, welcome to RDO.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Lowe, I thought you were talking about somebody else. That intro was so good. Thank you. I am humbled by that description, and it's a joy to be here.
I'm so excited to talk with you today. I know that compliance and regulation are your first loves. We both share that in those backgrounds. But I also know that you have a passion for sustainable performance models. And I think that that's the direction that we're going to go in today. Is that okay with you?
I think that sounds great. And it's really on the forefront of everybody's mind as we see the industry expanding and the need for these skill sets become much more prominent. What we're noticing is that a lot of our counterparts in the regulatory and compliance space are too heavily reliant on outdated methods and models. And so I'm excited to dig in and share not just some best practices, but also what we've seen work and not work. I've got this unique view, having been a regulator myself, then working on the banking side and the fintech side. You know, every one of those chairs that you sit in, you get to see the performance models from a little bit of a different angle. And it makes a huge difference, that ability to compare and contrast what has been effective compared to what might be less so.
Wow, absolutely, absolutely. So the first thing that I want to know, and I'm sure some of our listeners want to know is, can you provide us with a brief overview of what sustainable performance models are and why are they crucial in today's business environment?
Yes, and this is going to come from a layperson, not a trained organizational development person. So this is going to be speaking directly to the people like me who are just the leaders inside of a business. So in my world, a sustainable performance model really has a lot to do with ensuring predictable outcomes over time, especially in environments that are tech enabled. You run into instances where people are looking to achieve speed, and they're achieving that speed at the expense of accuracy or completeness or risk mitigation. In other environments, you see people who aren't paying any attention at all to speed, and then they start to lose their competitive advantage because these business processes are moving too slowly and really reducing their effectiveness in a different way. So when you talk about sustainable in especially governance and compliance, it's, can I produce these positive results over extended periods of time? And I can't really do that if I haven't decided what is my outcome intended to be. So there's this notion of defining the objectives and, I hate to use this hackneyed phrase, but define what success looks like.
Yeah.
I get tired of hearing it, but it's just so critical and important. There's that piece, which is you got to know what outcome you're trying to drive. And then I think another element of sustainable is, have you documented this, especially in startups, especially in tech? When you're moving fast, there's a temptation to just, oh, Pam knows how to do it. Taunya knows how to do it. We don't have time to write all this down. Well, if you don't document it, you cannot assure that it will be done the same way a second time. And if you don't document it, you're going to be at a real disadvantage when you go back and try to figure out process improvements. Because if you haven't documented how you did it in the first place, how are you going to repeat that experiment? So I think we do have to borrow some concepts from our friends in the scientific communities to say, how are we going to get these test results to be predictive? Well, first we have to document our test protocol. So the development of policies, procedures, and programs that are part of a governance model are heavily reliant on documenting both actions, governance standards, decision points along the way, so that as you go back and try to put that under a spotlight and see what you could do better, you have a framework in which to do it. The other element of sustainability that people often forget, and I hear this all the time from beleaguered executives everywhere, has to do with the human capital, as you said. A sustainable model is not relying on a single point of failure in one individual or one department because you are sacrificing performance at the expense of cost savings, and you're trying to keep costs as low as you can. And governance, risk, and compliance are always the last places that anybody wants to spend any money. Look, I don't want to pay a dime more to the government than I have to. I don't want to spend a minute more on compliance than is required. But if you're telling me as a leader that I've got to rely on a single point of failure because we don't have the money to do this the right way, I'm going to come back and challenge you. And I'm going to ask, what's our objective? What outcome are we trying to drive? And what happens if that single point of failure fails? And I think when we describe the conversation this way, we get a lot less opposition from our fellow executives, be they in finance, be they at the chief executive level, that they start to understand you're there solving a business problem. It happens to be that one of the tools in that solution is a human effort. And you cannot, the same way that you would never rely on a single software to accomplish all of the tasks of your business, you should not be relying on a single person. to accomplish all of the tasks of a job role. So you've got to have those redundancies. And where do we see this bite us in the behind most often?
Yeah.
We don't have redundant people. We haven't documented our process. And everybody is just kind of looking around, waiting for that person to leave the organization because they're burned out.
And then they have to start all over again.
And it's far worse than addressing these needs in a more proactive way. I like to say in compliance, you can pay me now or you can pay somebody else later.
Yes.
But you're not going to get away with not funding these initiatives.
Yes. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for that lead in. So first I want to say that I think you are the appropriate person to have this conversation because you've seen it, you've been a part of it, you've been on the compliance and regulatory end, and so you can create your thought leadership around it without having the org development title. So I just want to say that for starting out, because I think that we get so caught up in well, is that your position? Is that your title? Is that your degree? And not really paying attention to the expertise that people bring to from their experience. We share some experiences, and so we've got to start looking at what experience people bring. And because you don't come from that org development background, you're going to see things a lot differently than someone who does. So no, we're not knocking org development, folks, but I'm just saying.
No, we love them and we've got to have them. But just to your point, I was on a coaching conversation this morning with a friend who's trying to get to the next career level, and she has a few missing pieces and parts to her background. She was a person who went right into the workforce without a degree. She's gotten that over time. She has, as a result of that, not moved as quickly as she wanted. Here's what I'll say about all of these fields, especially as we enable them with technology and as we enable them with a different style of human being. It used to be the main requirement for these jobs was that you could memorize and recite a body of rules or regulations and then recall that quickly in the moment when somebody came up to you and asked you a question about it. It was more of a, what should we do if? And you were expected to be like, remember in the movies I don't remember which movie it was because I'm not good at this stuff, but there was one where you would go and you'd put the quarter in the fortune telling machine and then the thing gives you back, spits out the ticket for the answer. And that was traditionally what people expected their compliance officer to be, was just that walking encyclopedia. With advancements in technology as well as regulation itself, that's not really the skill set anymore. You can go find the answer to any question that you want as long as you know how to get there. I think that the skills that we're looking for in these roles are now much less dependent, I should say, on traditional training and much more dependent on agility.
Yes.
Quick-wittedness, the ability to learn, the ability to synthesize a lot of information quickly, and to apply critical thinking skills. So what we're finding is that people who have focused more on this memorization style approach are not as effective in the modern workforce. And it tires them out to be in the setting where they're not being asked what a rule says, they're being asked what are the risks of doing or not doing something a certain way. And when it comes to regulation, the other thing is that nobody is an expert on a new regulation. And I use that phrase with a lot of my developmental resources, people that may be earlier career stage or have transitioned into regulatory roles because they've come from a different part of the company. Nobody's an expert on something. If this law was just published, there is no one who's an expert on it. Not even the people who wrote it. Not even the people who wrote it know what it says, really. So that allows people, if they've got the right skill for investigative work, if they have a curious intellect, and if they know how to research effectively, I don't really care what piece of paper they come with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is still one of the frontiers in financial services that is unexplored. That, we've embraced it in developer roles, we've embraced it in people who do coding and programming.
Yeah.
But we still have this kind of fixed mindset around, you've got to have credential X in order to be good at this job.
Yeah,
and
that's no longer the case.
It's no longer the case. And I mean, with some very rare fields, yes, absolutely. But yeah, I'd love your perspectives on that too.
So I want to go back to, I want to hit a couple of things. I was taking notes as you were talking. Speed versus accuracy. You can get things done really fast, and that's going to increase your risk. I like, when we talk about how can we create a positive outcomes model over time. I think about when I worked for the government, and whenever there was turnover in a seat, everything had to start all over again. And it didn't matter if the person was there 10 years or 2 years. They were not documenting the policies and the processes. And of course, there were policies and processes that were stabilized. But how do we get the providers to do this consistently so that we can continue to get the funding that we need? How do we continue to do this so that we do become model programs instead of the auditors are coming, let's,
oh my gosh,
let's make it shiny and bright.
Yes, every person who's been in our field is laughing right now at that, because ain't that the truth? It is like, companies coming, clean up the house, throw everything in the closet.
I used to visit substance abuse residential programs, Pam, and we could smell the bleach from the parking lot. I'm like, oh my God. And so it's like, what do you need to do to put these things in place so that it is a part of the culture, so that it's an everyday thought process, not that we've got to prepare for the auditors or the compliance or the regulatory bodies to come out. And absolutely, it should not be based on one person.
That's right. That's right. You've got that. So there's the obvious, right? Which is just, you've got to have redundancy of resources. And even if you can't get it in terms of human beings, you have to cross-train the people that you have, right? Yes. You have to be, you have to position that not as a quote unquote necessary evil, but more of a, hey, it's got to get boring for anybody to do the same exact job day in and day out. Let's have some cross-training so that we can relieve each other once in a while. Mm-hmm. In organizations that are fairly flat, I think the real trick, it's kind of like, I describe it as, for those listeners who might have children, one of the techniques I used when my daughter was small, she didn't like vegetables so much. She loves them now, but when she would like them less, I would just puree them, put some tomatoes in there to turn the sauce red. And it's incredible how many vegetables you can get on top of a pizza or spaghetti or inside of a burrito or taco with a child loving it and not knowing all the stuff that's in there.
Yes.
So I think in our organizations, if we can think of that same approach, we need to kind of hide the compliance requirements inside of the business processes, because whenever it's thought of as an afterthought, people tend to fixate on it. Oh, and then there's this sort of natural rebellion that occurs when people don't have a lot of control over their own tasks or duties or decisions. They rebel against that which appears not to be part of the job. Mm-hmm. And the way to make it a part of the job is not to dictate or mandate that it become part of the job, although that will sometimes be a necessity. It's again going back to that objectives focused kind of communication, where you go to the person in the business line who's responsible for doing that work and you say, hey, we've got a goal here that I need to discuss with you, because you are much better positioned than I am to know what is our best path toward that goal. You do this job every day. I may look over your shoulder, I may come in every so often, but it's your team responsible for driving this outcome.
Mhm.
How can we work together to make that outcome a part of the normal routine every day? And so rather than it being a prescription now that you have imposed, a directive that they have to follow, you have created a mutual objective. You have defined the standard for them in a clear enough way that their creative juices now get involved, and they go, oh, I know how we could do that. We could do it this way. And when you reach agreement in that more collaborative fashion, you know, in the earlier part of my career, we used to use the buzzword buy-in, but you've got their buy-in, that they have developed it, they have committed to it. So
Right.
now if you find that even based on their buy-in, they are not performing to it, it makes that coaching experience a lot different, because it isn't, you didn't do what I asked you to do.
Mhm.
It's, you didn't do what you said you could do. And that's a lot different than the old school, you know, checkbox approach to all this. When people talk to me about the intergenerational differences in the workforce relative particularly to governance and compliance, we've all seen the memes, we've all seen the Instagram reels of the different, how the different generations work.
Right.
But that concept, no matter who is owning it, that is a more universal concept. That if you yourself have committed to do something a certain way, then your emotional reaction to being made aware that things aren't happening the way you promised or intended, it is a very different dynamic. And you find people more willing to take the ownership of whatever caused the outcome that you didn't want, to come up with new ideas for how to produce a better outcome. And you've done all that without destroying the, you know, the emotional side of your relationship with that contributor.
Right, right. So Pam, let me ask you this. You know, so we've talked about a lot. We've talked about a lot. I'm a huge advocate of cross training. I think cross training should be a part of every organization. Whatever seat you sit in, you don't get the opportunity to get comfortable in just that. You need to learn what other people are doing so that you can support your team. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about leaders, you know, striking this balance between creating sustainability. It can be challenging. What can leaders do, or how can leaders design performance models that deliver the results that they would like to achieve, that will create ongoing organizational success and resilience? So we've talked about cross training. We've talked about speed versus accuracy, and minimizing risk. Are there some other things that leaders should be mindful of when they are looking at using this model?
What I hear the most from my teams, and just as a guidepost, you know, I've built teams that have stayed together, like even long after I left the team as their leader. I think that there's got to be a very deliberate team selection in the first place, right? Because it's terrible to have to correct a hiring misstep. And so a lot of deliberate intent in your hiring process, even if it takes longer. You've got to find the right fit for the job. You've got to find the right person for the team cohesion. And that's very tricky when you have diverse workforces, but it's absolutely doable. but it has to be done with intent. Okay. So I think a lot of companies will still try to accidentally hire the right people and
Yes.
just get lucky. When you do it with intent, I was sharing with another colleague, our hiring process at Sezzle is completed in about 3 weeks' time. For everything but very top tier C-suite. But if you are a VP and under that level, if we're spending more than 3 weeks with you, we're doing something wrong, because we've devised very deliberate screening processes. We have customized those to the job role itself. We do a variety of kind of simple standardized sorts of tests, along with take-home tests that are directly about the job. And so we get to know that person very well in a short span of time. We also know that time is of the essence. If we need the help and the help is out there and they're free, let's make them an offer. Let's not lose these top quality candidates to indecision or bureaucracy. That's one, team formation. And honestly, also including colleagues in the interview process, which is rarely done. Even when I see people doing team interviews, they tend to be with other executives. Well, I don't really care if the other executives like my person. I care whether the rest of our team likes the person.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to really interact with a level above mine. So it's got to be a solid fit peer to peer. And I know that that's controversial. People say, oh, do you want to expose the outside world to your team? Well, I'm proud of my team.
Yeah, exactly.
They are a selling point for me. When people meet my teammates, they're like, oh my gosh, I want to be part of that.
I want to be a part of that team. Yeah.
Yes. So I look at that as a real asset. Once you've got somebody on the team, now it kicks into high gear of step one, get to know that person much better. I think leaders spend too little time getting to know someone once they've been hired. They either get sort of, put into the ranks, they're assigned their buddy, and off they go. We have weekly team meetups. I have daily 10-minute check-ins with my team until it gets to a certain size, but until about 10 to 20 team size, you can keep it pretty intimate. Every other week, one-on-ones with each person to make sure you know what makes them motivated and what makes them enjoy their workday. That allows you to build the team configuration even more effectively as you think about the delegation of tasks and duties. But I think the most critical thing that I always hear repeated, and that even after 36 years in the workforce, I am still practicing, is the clarity of vision and the clarity of expectation. It is, what is our overall company goal? And you can use lots of different frameworks for this. I've seen people do well with, key results indicators and key performance indicators, that kind of metrics model. That's pretty popular in tech and a lot of fields. It's not so much which framework do you pick. It's, are you able to convey as a company, here are the 3 to 5 big things that as a business we want to accomplish during this time period, whether that's annually, quarterly, or even monthly, depending on your cadence. Does everybody in the company understand what those 3 or 5 big things are?
Right.
And it's our job as a leader to communicate that clearly to everyone, not wait to see if every manager will carry the message correctly. When we say tone at the top, we literally mean the articulation of that standard directly to the teams in a way that's clear, understandable, and they know what the company is striving for. But then
consistent
and consistent and durable, right? Because how many of us have been a place where this quarter we're doing this, but next quarter, all of that has changed and we're doing something different. There is nothing more damaging to employee morale or company success than a moving target set of goals. It doesn't mean you can't be agile. You've just got to build in a bucket for that agility, but it can't be a constantly moving target. It can't be profitability one quarter and innovation a different quarter, right? So there's got to be that clarity of what goes above all else. But then you've got to translate that within each department to how that department contributes to those goals.
Right.
And
How do we
that's where
operationalize it? How do we
how to
operationalize
operationalize it? Because otherwise, people are just kind of, everybody's in the pool and everybody's swimming, but nobody's in their lane. Nobody knows what the time clock is, right? And it just becomes chaos.
Mm-hmm. And when it becomes when it becomes chaos, Pam, then you get the well, that's not my job. That's our department doesn't have anything to do with that. And so
Yes.
now we've got the big divide happening within our organization.
Yes, the silos, the dreaded silos.
Yes.
So I think the other important piece before you get to that whole it's not my job, and here's one preemption to that statement, right? Is not only do you have to translate that to departmental goals, you have to translate it to individual goals. And you have to be a strong enough leader and manager, including time manager, to have that conversation with your direct reports and insist that they have that conversation with their direct reports and so on. Because if I don't feel dialed into the company mission and I'm trying to set my own goals, that's going to become very apparent.
Yes.
But if I, kind of like that other example, I, the employee, am contributing to that goal setting. It's not just being delegated to me or assigned to me, or I'm told what to do. When I'm a participant in that goal setting, it also eases the coaching cycle, because we go back, whether that's weekly, monthly, quarterly, and say, looks like we're a little off the mark here. What do you think is happening? And then it's not, and whenever an employee has ever said in the past to me, well, it's not my job to fill in the blank. It's a very calm reiteration of what is your job, right? So if somebody says, it's not my job to turn the light off at night when we go home. Well, I understand that. And I would agree with you. Maybe that isn't your job, but part of your job is to secure the facility, and turning the light off is a part of that.
Yeah. It's creating that ownership,
Yes.
ownership in the organization. I love, I wrote them down as like 4 points, team, be intentional about the team design. It's gotta be a right fit, the right person. And I would add, you need to, once you select that person, be committed to the development of them as well. And then I love the team formation.
Amen to that one.
Include
supporting
peers.
them once they're on the team.
Yes.
The same way that you supported them to hire them.
Oh my goodness. People come in and we set them up for failure. And I think now, you and I had this conversation, I think last week, there are different generations, and one generation may look at work differently than another. And so we really need to start looking at how can I best create ongoing development for the team, for individuals, until they can, stand on their own, and they really understand what they're doing. It doesn't mean you've got to hold their hands constantly, but if you are from a generation where your mindset can't be, well, I had to figure it out on my own. I got it. They're going to have to get it the best way they can. As a leader, you're going to have continuous turnover. And so I love the peer-to-peer, what you said about peer-to-peer involvement in the interview process, because those are going to be the people that can really, I don't want to say sell the organization or the position, but they can come in and be honest about what's happening and why they want to work there, as well as to determine if this candidate is going to be a good fit.
That's right. I think one of the things that I will say there that you do have to watch out for as a manager is we all love people who are like us.
Yes.
But and just because you can resonate with somebody in a personality sort of basis, that also has the potential negative of people self-selecting people who are like them.
Yes, which
And
I've
so,
seen that become a nightmare as well.
and then you can end up with a team that you didn't expect to have because you know, so it's a balancing act. But what I'll say on the peer-to-peer aspect is, we're going to assume that anybody who makes it into the peer-to-peer is qualified to do the work, right? And
Yes.
I think once you set that tone with your team to say, look, you're going to talk to a highly qualified person. What I need to know from you is, will their presence on the team be net positive or net negative based on how you interacted with them? Would you enjoy working alongside them? Would you enjoy doing social things that were work related with this person? Right. So we're looking at a whole different kind of a scorecard than we might have looked at in the past, you know, where we focused solely on credentials. It's our job as the leader, though, to make sure that our team, as a combination, as a unit, has all of what it needs. So you have to think of the team as an organism that is separate from the individual.
Yes.
Because I'll give you, you know, especially in our roles as compliance leaders, some compliance people, they love to be behind the scenes. They wouldn't come on a podcast if you paid them $1 million to do it. They'd be so nervous, palms sweating. They don't want public facing.
Right.
And if I'm using some cookie cutter approach to hiring or even team development, I'm not going to try to turn, you know, a potato into a carrot. I mean, I'm just going to go, wow, potatoes and carrots taste really good together. How can we make this blend in? Right. So you can tell I'm a foodie because I use a bunch of food analogies.
I love it, Pam. I love it.
You know, and it's the same for the team. Like, we're putting together the recipe that's going to make stuff taste great.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that every person is going to be a clone of the next. It doesn't mean that we're going to only stick to one hiring archetype. And it means that on the job, the people that we choose are going to have to like the taste of that recipe.
Right. But Pam, isn't that diversity, right?
Yes.
That's diversity. It's
yes.
You know, I always have to remind people that diversity is not just about race. It is about how we think, differences in thought. It's the generations. It's someone may be from the north, someone may be from the south. It's skill set. And
Everything.
So going back to, you know, preparing that person to be on the interview panel, that comes from development and getting the team members to understand, you know, no, Joey may not be a sociable person, but he always asks good questions. He is a key, you can still be a key member of the team, and have a different operating system, if you will.
That's right. And but here's where it really becomes work for the leader. And I see a lot of our colleagues fail to have proficiency at this. You have to spend time defining what are the team proficiencies necessary.
Yes.
So rather than just looking at individual proficiencies, which that kind of falls more over into the, hey, people ops, help us define this role, right? This is more, what are the team proficiencies that are necessary, and how do I mix and match the humans who will be on the team, just like a sports coach, okay? If you had a football team that was all place kickers, you would not score very many touchdowns. If you had a football team with no defensive backs, you would lose every game, right? So I think some of those analogies that we find in other team-based things like sports are helpful to us, because we're building the dream team to get our jobs done.
Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about teams in this process. I want to talk about employee engagement and performance, right? So how does a sustainable performance model contribute to employee engagement and satisfaction? We've been hearing a lot about quiet quitting, quiet hiring, people, not feeling a sense of belonging in an organization, not feeling engaged, not feeling satisfied. How does a sustainable performance model contribute to engagement and satisfaction?
Well, I think the one of the main themes is this collaboration, right? I
Mhm.
can't know what's going to motivate you unless I know you and I ask you.
Mm.
I think too many people are trying to develop their performance models based on some template, some textbook approach, right? Just talk to your employee. Which of the parts of your job do you like and which parts don't you like?
Yeah.
Oh, the parts you don't like, well, guess what? Your person across the hall loves doing that. Let's shift this to that person. There's so many easy ways to improve job satisfaction if you have developed and cultivated the right team players
Mhm.
the people have more versatility. You can move the tasks around, you can move the people around. So number one is just ask people what drives their satisfaction. Everybody will say things like, I don't like to be micromanaged.
Mhm.
Guess what? I don't like to micromanage you either. How do we avoid that? We agree on your deliverables and you deliver them on time. If that doesn't happen organically, then we will have to have more engagement, right? So I
Mhm.
think a big part of it is not assume what other people might or might not want or not want.
Mhm.
And that's just like human relations. It doesn't even have to be in the job, you know?
It really is. It's relational versus transactional. It's,
Yes.
and I say this a lot in when I'm coaching leaders. It's you've got to give a damn. You've got to give a damn about your human capital. You've got to give a damn about the people that work with you. If you only see them as people to get things done, to meet the goals of the organization, you have no idea what it takes to keep them satisfied in the job.
That's
And you
right.
never ask that question. And then they leave and you're surprised, like, why are you leaving? I thought you were happy. Well, you never, how would you know that they were happy or not?
Right.
Because they've been here a year and they've gone through the evaluation process. You've met with them once in 12 months. And
Right. Right. You can't. And here's the thing. I take every departure personally,
mm,
meaning if I'm the leader, I did something wrong because I either didn't hire you with enough deliberate thought toward whether you'd be a fit,
mhm,
or I didn't give you enough support in the performance of your duties,
mm.
or I didn't give you enough support economically. Or, there's a whole list of, it's that old saying, when you point a finger outward for pointing back at you,
Yes.
it is the leader who sets the tone. And as a leader, especially as you're coming up as a leader, you have to understand that you are the leader, that people are looking to you to set the tone, the behavior. And sometimes when you're rising through the ranks, as many of us do,
Mhm.
reach that point where it shifts from you are a co-creator and a collaborator to you are a person strategizing and directing the
Yeah.
activities of others.
Yeah.
I say to all my staff, a company is nothing but its people.
Yes.
It's nothing but the people. If there are no people, there is no company. You can pretend all you want that you can build the world's greatest technology or a product that will fly off the shelves just because somebody puts a post on Instagram. But if there's nobody on the other end of that to serve, to help, to support, to track, to account for, to distribute, right? Then
Yes.
all of that wealth that was created by whatever those actions were evaporates. And And every great company has in common that understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have, I loved what you said about relational and not transactional, because in 2024, anybody with the will to earn income by following what they believe, what they know, what they love, that's available to anybody.
Yeah.
We're not just competing today with other employers for talent. We're competing with creating an environment that makes people happier than working alone, because everybody has the capability to work alone if they want to.
Yeah.
And for some of our contributors, maybe they have that and maybe they don't. I will tell you this, in the last 10 years of my career, the most recent 10 years, I have hired hundreds of people and I have only had to fire, I can count on one hand. It doesn't mean that out of those hundreds of people, I didn't have folks who didn't move on to other things, but we did it in a human way. We knew each other. They said to me, Pam, I'm ready for a bigger challenge. I said to them, Jerry, I don't know if we've got that for you here. Let me help you find something. Or people have said, I thought I would like to do this work. Maybe they're a recent college graduate. I thought I would like this work. I don't like it so much.
Mm-hmm.
You're a great employee. Let's see if we find a different home for you inside our organization.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're treating the people as the most important thing, Richard Branson, in one of his books, he's a controversial figure now, but back then he was lauded as a guru. But one thing he stuck with me was, he said, your people are the only thing that your customers touch.
Mm.
You have to put your employees even before your customers. He said, the customer is always right is a myth.
Yes.
The customer is sometimes wrong, but the only person that can help you determine that is if you've treated the employee right. So every employee to me is a person, not a number. Every employee to me is someone to have a dialogue with about their hopes and dreams, because ultimately, as a leader, you are in the privileged position of helping other people achieve their dreams. I get choked up when I think about it.
Yes.
Because, and especially when you get to the, I'm in my 50s now. When you get to this age, you start thinking about your legacy.
Yes. Yep.
And if your legacy as a leader is that you've created a lot of other leaders, it touches your soul in a way that I just can't describe.
Yeah.
And you know that you're changing lives. And even for people, when you come to the end of a path with them and they move on or you move on, if you've conducted yourself with that eye to the future and their growth, it usually ends in a very amicable way.
Yes. Yes. When you first started talking, I thought about, dreams. Everyone comes into an organization with their own dream. And I can't remember who said it, if you can help people get the things that they want, they'll help you get the things that you want. And I think being the type of leader where you can create an environment where open and honest dialogue and communication can take place, that's invaluable, to be able to come and say, you know what, I thought I was gonna like doing this, I'm really not. And as a leader, you say, well, let's talk about it. Let's see where else we can put you in the organization, or let's see if there's anything that we can do. To me, that says I see value in you and I don't want to lose you.
That's right.
I instead of the alternative being, Pam, this isn't working out and I'm putting in my 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, if you have more than 5 years of experience in management and it comes as a surprise to you that someone hates their job and wants to leave, go get yourself some more coaching, because that means that you are not in tune with what's happening in your team.
Yeah.
People can't hide their feelings for very long if you are engaged with them on a regular basis.
Yes, not just once a year for the annual review, on a day, consistently.
That's right. And I think we have to be mindful as leaders also that we need those other tiers, because if I've got a team of 20 people, I can't connect with all 20 people every day. I probably need some helpers, splitting those into groups of 10, or depending on budgets, 5, right? You maintain this collaborative approach, different coaches for different things inside the team, which then also provides development opportunities for other people who want to take on, maybe start dipping their toe in the leadership waters to see what it's like. And that again is about the very intentional design of the team structure, so that you're not having to answer every question. You're not having to be consulted for. They've got a peer, they've got a buddy, they've got in teams that are bigger, they've got a direct supervisor that they know is going to fill that role. And when you do that and you end up with these concentric circles of management, it does feel more like a familial atmosphere, because you can go get your question answered by your aunt or uncle versus having to go directly to your parents, right? It's a very similar thing.
Yes.
I don't like when companies say we're all a family, because work is not a family. Work is a workplace, but a workplace can have a familial flair to it.
Yes.
And can take some of the best things that make family units work and apply those in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. Simon Sinek says that in one of his videos, and he talks about, you're working with your brothers and your sisters, and brothers and sisters may not always agree, but they're going to be there to support each other and help each other grow, and tell each other when you're not doing a good job, and here's some things that you can do. Yeah. And so that was really powerful. Pam, what do you want leaders to take away from this conversation? This has been a very rich conversation. And so for the leaders who will listen to this, what do you want them to take away?
Don't be afraid to be authentic as you cultivate your leadership style. I think earlier in your career path, it's tempting to want to put on the persona of a leader, because you do have to fake it till you make it. Okay. That's just reality. But try to be as authentic as possible. I think that really positions you well with those that you lead. I think understanding your role in supporting the teammates that you have, whether you selected or inherited them, and that your function in supporting them requires you to develop your own mental and structural clarity around what their goals and objectives are, what the outcomes are that need to be driven, and how you'll foster that collaboration in the team effort. I think that's the second takeaway. And then, I think the third is honestly, have some fun. Don't take yourself too seriously, right? We are all human. We are all still going to make leadership mistakes from the day that we step into leadership till the day that we decide that all we're going to do is golf. But know that you're allowed to have fun while you're doing this too. It doesn't all have to be completely serious 100% of the time, because helping other people to do their best is where you shine. If you're a person who's listening to this podcast, it's your passion. So don't be afraid to inject a little more fun into it.
I'm going to add some things that I want people to take away. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable as a leader. And the other side of fake it till you make it, you really don't have to fake it till you make it today. You can get a coach.
That's right.
You can get a coach to help you develop your leadership persona and your authenticity. And don't forget to develop others, as that's where you will leave your legacy. Your legacy will come from developing others. And I think that's those are some of the nuggets that that I would want leaders to take away. What are you reading that we should be reading?
Oh my goodness. I've kind of shifted more recently to fiction.
Okay.
In terms of like business related books, I tend to be a consumer more of video style content. So
Okay.
that comes to me through a variety of different means. But I've switched to reading a lot of fiction. And the reason that I've done that, I'm rereading, believe it or not, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, because I love detective things, but I also love thinking about the different ways that people interact in fictional settings, the character depth, and reveals a lot about the interpersonal level of things. And I can take notes even in a fiction novel about how I see the characters interact. But that piece of classic fiction was really interesting. I was gifted a piece of dystopian future fiction called Wool, and I got that gift because it was set in Atlanta. And so it's helping me to expand my horizons beyond just the workplace. And I think that's probably why I was thinking of the theme of fun too. You know, we can't spend 24 of our hours each day thinking only of business concepts. We do have to nourish our souls a little bit from time to time. And so that those are a release for me.
Yes. Who's some of your favorite video content creators that you listen to?
Well, you mentioned Simon Sinek. I'm also a big Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V fan, just because I think he comes across with a real authenticity and is inspirational to quite a number of people. There's a whole Marshall Goldsmith group of Executive 100 coaches that are in the Marshall Goldsmith network that I think are pretty fantastic. And now that I am more in tune with your goals, I think I'm going to pick up a little bit more of your podcast too.
Oh, we would love to have you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We've been chatting with Pamela Perdue, the Chief Compliance Officer for Sezzle. Visit the show notes to see how to connect with Pam, and be sure to grab a copy of Results-Driven Organizations, the 4 Keys to a High-Performance Workplace. You can use the link in the show notes page. And don't forget to grab our special gift to you for being a valuable listener. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Results Driven Organizations podcast with Dr. Taunya Lowe. Be sure to review the show notes for the resources mentioned, and don't forget to grab your free gift available at freegiftfromtaunya.com. Until next time.